more comment on that these countries has agreed to do this pledge today?
Well, it's a pledge, it's a promise. Obviously, we need to see it changed into action and real action. But if they incorporate this within their NDCs, their new national climate plans that all nations are hopefully revising upwards at this moment, then it would go into national legislation, hopefully within their own domestic national legislation, and become something that they have to achieve. So I think it's a very good start, and it's many developing countries as well, including the country of Azerbaijan, which is hosting COP29, so that's a good start. But I think when it comes to oil and gas and when it comes to coal mines, there is already some action taking place in Australia, for example. The methane is so high from their coal mines, it dwarfs any of their other emissions. But they brought in a carbon price in Australia just recently, and this is now incentivizing people to destroy the methane coming from the coal mines. The European Union, of course, has just drafted regulation that they will not allow natural gas to come into Europe if it comes from sources abroad, like, say, the United States or Canada or Nigeria, where if nobody makes any efforts to reduce the leaks of the methane from their operations, then the EU says it will not receive that gas. So there are market mechanisms coming in now through regulation as well. So I think you can see, if you start piecing together this story, that within a very short space of time, in the last 2 or 3 years, 4 years, the world is suddenly waking up to methane and acting upon it, because I think it probably is the only way of halving those emissions by 2030.
These hidden methane emissions, could they be the answer to why the temperature is rising so fast right now? Because a lot of people are surprised by how fast the temperature is going up.
Yes, I think there could be something in what you're saying, and I think we'll have to see what the scientists say about that. But one's gut instinct is that the satellites, the new satellite, the methane sat, is seeing emissions much higher than anybody ever realized, coming from these many sources: agriculture, oil and gas industry, coal mines, and waste tips. That this could be part of the story why the temperature is going up so rapidly right now. And I think the science will have to decide on whether that's correct or not. But hopefully the satellites will also see that people are living up to their promises to actually reduce those emissions. And this will be now a new test of accountability of nations. And I talked to the scientist who was the primary scientist behind the methane sat, who's actually with the Environmental Defense Fund in the United States, working with the New Zealand Space Agency. And he said they are now working very hard on a carbon dioxide that can be seen from space, with the kind of accuracy we need to measure the emissions from nations. And maybe we find out that some of the reporting on carbon dioxide has not been quite as accurate to the UN Framework Convention by nations as previously thought.
Got some of the nice British humor there at the end.
Exactly. But I'll just add one.
Yeah,
I'll add
sure.
a couple of points which may be relevant.
Yeah. What
So,
would you like to add?
Just to say, so for example, even in waste tips in Europe, right, for example in Germany, the government claims that the amount of methane coming out is XYZ to the UN. But then what they are doing is simply accepting the information of the companies who have installed collectors for the methane on these waste tips, who say, oh, they are 80% efficient. So the government files that information. Now what we're seeing with satellites and other information is perhaps they're only 50% of the methane capturing. And this is the kind of story that I think is being repeated across the coal industry, the oil and gas industry, and other places. So it's a new era, and maybe soon it'll be a new era for reporting more accurately on carbon dioxide. Thank you, satellites.